thank you everyone for coming. I hope you're enjoying Dublin and its sights and its charms. I, for one, am certainly enjoying the conference and I'm enjoying the conversations that we've been having. Hopefully, the content I'm about to share with you, you'll enjoy, and I hope it resonates. So, let me introduce myself. I'm Ian Robinson. I'm the Chief Architect at Titania. I've been with the organization now for about 4 years, and my role has been shaping our Nipper Enterprise solution and working with the market, working with customers, working with partners to help deliver something pretty cool. So, why am I here? Well, effectively, what our Nipper Enterprise solution does is we can automate the security and compliance assessment of critical networking infrastructure, so routers, firewalls, and switches, and we can do so continuously at scale. So this is particularly resonant when we're talking about PCI DSS compliance. So where automation allows, we should be trying to avoid sampling. So I'm going to demonstrate to you how easy it is to do this and allow automation platforms like Nipper Enterprise to allow you to move away from ad hoc annual sampling to regular assessments of every device within your cardholder data environment, and beyond the cardholder data environment, every device in your network. So, because we automate the assessment of critical networking infrastructure, that's particularly linked to segmentation. So if we take a step back and we think about what we're trying to do here, we're trying to isolate important areas of our network, and we're trying to secure them and effectively prevent them from attacks, but also prevent proliferation of attacks going across the network. So we're talking about privilege escalation and lateral movement. So effective network segmentation is particularly key in that security. So understanding what your network looks like and how segmented it is really important. Let's imagine for a second that we're already breached. So our perimeter's breached. How can an attacker move laterally across the network? If our network is effectively flat, they can move pretty quickly and pretty swiftly. So let's think for another scenario. Let's say that you've got somebody, say in HR, sat on a machine. There's no reason why there should even be a physical cable or a physical connection from them to a cardholder data environment. Even if it's protected through configuration, you're only one misconfiguration away from an attacker being able to move laterally from that machine onto your cardholder data environment. So network segmentation is particularly linked to attack surface management. If you're doing effective network segmentation, this helps the challenge really about managing your attack surface and understanding what exposure you have to real-world threats. In order to do this, there are 4 key elements of this. So you need to effectively discover what's on your network. You need to know what is physically on your network, and then you need to validate it. So you need to understand, does this need to be on your network? If it shouldn't be on your network, you need to kick it off. If it should be on your network, you need to register it in an inventory of some kind. From that inventory, you then need to assess it. You need to assess the configuration of it. You need to assess the software and OS and vulnerability information on it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how Nipper Enterprise can, effectively help you achieve that kind of network segmentation and provide attack surface management assurance, giving you several risk lenses to look at your misconfigurations and your vulnerability data to help you really focus remediation effort on what's important. So our Nipper Enterprise platform effectively does this by being fed off of a CMDB, or a configuration repository, or a Git repository, or a configuration store of some kind, and takes the information from that and allows you to schedule an assessment or at any cadence, so you can choose to perform a PCI DSS 4.0 assessment of every device that is in a cardholder data environment, and do so every month. But the real power is being able to not only assess that and look at your snapshot posture every month, but day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, when you're focusing remediation effort on fixing security vulnerabilities and non-compliances, your network is effectively changing. So you really want to assess what's changed rather than wait until the end of the month when the next schedule kicks off. So our platform can effectively identify what's changed and proactively go off and perform another PCI assessment for the devices that have changed on day 3, 4, 5, and 6. And you're in complete control of this. So you can control, first of all, your scheduling, but you can also control which devices you want to proactively assess, which security framework you want to assess them against. And all of this information is pushed through our data agnostic pipeline. And we have integrations with several platforms. We can push data out into a SIM to give you your SOC teams, information on your high-level risk posture, and we can push out to trouble ticketing systems, GRC platforms. So delivering this kind of value and high-fidelity data into these platforms, allowing you to make some really important risk management decisions on what you should remediate first when you're looking at all of the vulnerabilities and all of the misconfigurations on your network. So beyond segmentation, I mentioned that segmentation is linked to attack surface management. So looking at tools that the likes of MITRE and CISA are providing, they are looking at information that is pretty important in terms of what's actually being used out in the wild. So MITRE are looking at attack techniques and attack tactics that are being used by real-world threat groups out in the wild to target particular industries. They're also looking at common attack patterns that are used to achieve this. And for the likes of CISA, for example, if we look at vulnerabilities in terms of CVEs, there's some research done by Gartner which has mentioned that 7.6% of those vulnerabilities are ever been exploited. So if we focus our remediation effort on every single vulnerability we have, we could be remediating vulnerabilities that might never get exploited in the wild. So rather than, here's 10,000 vulnerabilities, good luck, off you go, you can apply a risk lens using our platform to allow you to focus on ones that are being used in the wild to attack your industry. So I'm going to show just how easy it is to do some of this with our Nipper Enterprise platform. I'm going to start by just talking a little bit about the fact that Nipper Enterprise is a web application that's designed to be deployed on-premise. So you can deploy it onto your network. It can operate in an air-gapped environment, and you can access it securely. And then as soon as you access it, you can register your configuration management databases, or like a GitHub repository. In this example, we're connecting to ServiceNow. And so you put in this data, you register that connection, and Nipper Enterprise will begin syncing itself up with that CMDB, understanding the references to all of the devices in that CMDB. As you can see here, we're syncing up. So far, we've got about 3,000. And in a minute, we should be somewhere near about the 10,000 mark. And not only that, we're also pulling in segmentation data. So the labeling is essentially, we have 36 different labels here, which speak to the kind of segmentation data of that CMDB. Now, I'm going to talk about the power of that in the next video, which is, now we've got our data synced up, we now want to schedule an assessment. So let's say we want to schedule a monthly PCI DSS 4.0 assessment. We can very quickly create a schedule, and we can choose what framework we want to schedule against. and we can pick a segment. So here we're looking at Acme LLC and base X. That means something to me as an organization. I also want to choose all the firewalls in that segment, and I want to select PCI, so I want to choose to do a PCI assessment, and I want to select my cadence to every month. Instantly then, that schedule will kick off, and it will continue to kick off every month there on in. As you can see here, we've isolated 122 devices out of those 10,000, and we've got now 122 PCI assessments on the go. So, once those assessments have been conducted, we can use Nipper Enterprise to delve into the human readable report that was generated. And I'm just going to demonstrate here the kind of level of fidelity of the information we're providing. We've made a recent change in the product so that now we're not only telling you where you weren't compliant, we're also telling you where you are compliant. And we're providing evidence of that. We provide risk prioritized views. And when you delve down into the individual testing procedures that we're performing, we provide evidence of where you're non-compliant, supporting information around that, and where appropriate, device-specific remediation. As you can see here, we're going to delve into a particular testing procedure that we've deemed a pass. We also provide supporting evidence that can then be taken out and put into various templates to support auditing and assessments. So, if you've got 10,000 devices, reading 10,000 reports like that is quite a challenge in itself. I mentioned earlier that we have an agnostic data pipeline. So, for example, here I'm going to demonstrate that with our agnostic data pipeline, we can feed out to the likes of Splunk. And we have some example dashboards here showing some trend analysis over time. We can choose a segment, so we can choose, say, everything in our headquarters, everything that's a switch, for example, and we can see the number of assessments over time, so the number of devices that meet that criteria that are being assessed over time. We can show the compliance posture over time, so we can show the pass-fail ratio. And then when you're not compliant, we can also break that down by risk. So you can start to see over time asking questions like, are we remediating the most important non-compliances first? You can delve down in and look at a particular point in time and start to see the snapshot. And so you can see your compliance versus non-compliance at that point in time, but also we can break that down into, say, the PCI requirements, where you're non-compliant, and also within that you can start to delve in and start to see the testing procedures that you're non-compliant against, broken again down by risk. You can delve in and at that point target a particular testing procedure and then identify all the devices within that segment that are non-compliant. Each one then you can delve in and you can then start to see the human readable report again. So if you really want to delve into that device at that particular point in time and see the assessment that was conducted. But equally, that same level of fidelity is being pushed out into Splunk. So you can still see the evidence of what we did, what we checked for, what we found, and then where appropriate, the same remediation advice in order to shut down that non-compliance and ultimately make your cardholder data environment more secure and more compliant. I mentioned earlier about attack surface management and looking at things through an attacker's lens. We take pride in the fact that with the fidelity of the data we produce, we can give you lots of different risk lenses to apply to your data. One of those being MITRE ATT&CK analysis. So where you have misconfigurations on your network, we can provide information on the relatable attack tactics and attack techniques that those misconfigurations and vulnerabilities relate to. What you're looking at here, and I'll demonstrate, is the MITRE ATT&CK navigator view. And we've been able to RAG this, so we're able to give you a risk rating straight off the bat. So you can see, red, for example, being the most critical. we can look at a particular segment. So again, looking at the headquarters, everything that's, say, OT, so operation technology, for instance, and then we can start to say, well, which attack techniques am I interested in? And then you can delve in and start to identify, well, which devices on my network result in an exposure to a particular attack technique. These are broken down by the risk ratings as well, so you can start to see, well, which ones are the most important. You can delve into the underlying data as well and understand, what we need to do in order to fix it. So this almost becomes like a remediation plan for that attack vector. You can also look at this from a historic position as well. So because all the data is being fed into Splunk, you can then start to ask questions like, well, okay, this is our attack posture right now, but what was it, say, 3 months ago? 3 months ago, we might have indicated, we've understood now that there was our first indicator of compromise. So we want to look at what was our attack posture look like back then. You can do so with this by actually just, rolling back the time and actually understanding, well, what was the MITRE attack view at that point? That can help inform incident response. It can help from a forensics point of view in terms of, well, how wide a net do we need to cast and what other segments do we need to look at because we were exposed to impaired fences, for example, in a particular segment. So I'll talk about configurations there, but we've also done the same MITRE attack analysis, but for software vulnerabilities. So this is software running on the device. So we can perform an MVD assessment or a PCERT assessment against these devices. And from that, we can then map onto the MITRE attack framework. You can then start to further look at risks by actually identifying, well, which of those are known exploited vulnerabilities as well, and then delve down into the data and start to identify, well, what are all the CVEs on my particular segment that are causing this exposure to this attack technique? So again, it performs like a nice remediation plan in terms of just focusing in on a particular technique. So it allows you to make kind of really good risk decisions around, well, what's more important? Is it fixing a kind of more critical issue on an administration area of my network, or is it fixing maybe a high or a medium or low on a particular important segment like the cardholder data environment? I mentioned earlier about CISA known exploited vulnerabilities. Again, we're providing risk lenses around that. We can provide information on trend analysis, showing you over time the number of devices you have on your network with known exploited vulnerabilities, the number of those with criticals, and again, over time, broken down by risk. You can identify all of the devices, that have known exploited vulnerabilities. We can show snapshot information about what it looked like at a particular point in time. This gives you information on, for example, the sort of most critical CVEs, and then you can start to identify all of the devices that have that most critical CVE. Equally, you can start answering questions like, which of my devices that are at most risk? Which devices have the most known exploited vulnerabilities on them? So those are the ones that I want to remediate first. So I just want to take a moment to say thank you, and I hope you found the content resonating. We are exhibiting at booth number 4 downstairs, so if you have any questions or you'd love to come along and say hello and keep the conversation going, we'd love to hear from you, hear your thoughts and your feedback. With our Nipper Enterprise platform, we can also provide a demonstration, and we can also organize a proof of value assessment as well. So if this is something of interest to you, come along, see us, talk to us, and within a proof of value, effectively what we can do is we can provide the ability to install this on your own test lab. You can put your own configs against it to kind of see what does the value look like, what do I get out of this platform. So yeah, thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed the content.